Work on this computer. Okay, there. Got it.
You get it?
I got it. Yeah, I hit something and I'm glad I paid attention to it because ordinarily I would have thought it was working and I would have just moved on and it wouldn't have been recording. So that wouldn't have been good.
So we're ready to roll?
Yes, let me bring this up, Dr. Revis, and then we'll get started. That is not what I want. Here it is. Let me just bring this up. It's slow. There you go. Dr. Revis, if you'd like to get started.
Okay, well, welcome to week 3. And I hope you've had a really good week and weekend of writing. I tell you what, I got some really good work in on Sunday evening, Dr. Stedman, and I was really pleased with the work. And we're going to talk a little bit about the process because we didn't really touch on that yet. So when Dr. Stedman and I give you comments and feedback on your work, we mean for you to make those revisions and then you put it back in the same thread that you initially submitted your work in. It stays in that revision phase until you get 100 on your draft, and then we'll tell you when it's ready to go in for final evaluation. Now that review process has to be completed and finalized by the following Sunday. So I think I sent back everybody's with some little something for you to revise. And I do that at the beginning, just kind of so you can see the expectations and see where what I emphasize in your writing. But if Dr. Stedman or I tell you to revise something, you need to revise it. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You need to revise it and get it in that feedback and get it back into us for review again. And that needs to be done. I like for it to be done by Thursday, honestly, because if it's not, and you're going into the weekend, you're having to revise task 1 and write task 2. So most of my revisions were very minor. Most of them were APA issues. I will say that. And anyway, now if your peers, when they give you feedback, you may look at it and say, I don't agree with that. Guess what? That's okay. That's just some feedback for you to consider. You don't have to take their feedback and do anything with it. Now, I would look over it and look and just check yourself against it. But that is for consideration because they're students just like you are. So again, but when Dr. Stedman and I tell you to do something or to revise this or revise that, you need to do that. That's definitely.
Dr. Revis, I will say though that I would say more than 90%. I would say 95% of, and I'll talk more about the peer reviews when we get to that. But I would say that I compared what you said to what I said. I went back and looked because I wanted to see if you want to. I would say 95% of them were on target, and I would say 95% of the students that have submitted their peer reviews, which were due by 7 o'clock today, and some of them are not there, but they probably were some of the best I have ever seen. The quality of them, the detail, the professionalism. I thank you for, for paying attention to last week and really shining in that area. And I'm going to tell you, Cindy, I think you made the comment that you appreciated that process immediately because it helped you better understand your own work, by having to do that. And I can see where any of them, Dr. Revis, would be able to after going through that, would be able to go back and to readily understand and make changes to their own. And that's the purpose of all this. Okay.
I agree. A lot of the feedback that you gave was right in line to what I had given your teammates. So I would say, I agree, Dr. Stedman, that's some of the best feedback that I have seen. And feedback doesn't come naturally to us. You have to really think about feedback and give examples and to make sure that people understand feedback.
But I'm going to say on the other
Uh-oh.
Okay.
I think we need to mute everybody, please.
Okay. Yes. TMI.
I'm sorry. That wasn't me though.
All right, who was that?
That's all
This
right.
is Candor.
That's all
This
right.
is Candor, but that wasn't me.
That's okay.
Oh.
We need to laugh anyway. So that's good. But I will say, Dr. Revis, if you fall into the 5% and you did not meet the standards this time, you may say, Dr. Stedman, Dr. Revis, you hurt my feelings with your comments back to me. It's not meant to hurt you, but we have to be honest with you. And if it's not right, it's not right. If it's not good, it's not good. And the only way, you can't skirt around things sometimes. You have to be, and as administrators, that you will have to learn to be able to do that. It doesn't mean that we like you any less. It's a fact. And the thing is, if you are one of those that had to get, I would call it a brutal comment or however you want to say it, then, what you need to do is to square your shoulders back and say, Dr. Stedman won't have to say that about me next week, or Dr. Revis won't have to say that about me next week. I'm going to show them, that I can do this and that I want to do this. I still understand for some it's a learning curve. There's a handful that probably are disappointed at this point. Don't wallow in that. You need to say, okay, what do I need to do about it? And I need to fix it now. And again, that's the process with being able to send the AAPSL task one back to us, until you get it right. That's the whole purpose in all of this. So, take all of this and fix it. Now, you can't, the peer reviews, if you didn't do them right the first time, you're not going to get a second chance on this one. You just have to fix it the next time. And if I didn't do it right this time, based on what I said or Dr. Revis said, then I promise you, I would not allow us to be able to say that again next week when you turn yours in.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, our goal is for all of you to score a 4 from your evaluator. And so we're going to try to, we've both been evaluators. We know what it takes to get a 4. We've done this Dr. Stedman's done it for years, much longer than I have, but we know what it takes to get a 4. And so that's why we make the comments, so you can revise them, and you're going to get 100 both in your draft, and then you'll get 100 for your class score when you turn it in for final evaluation. So we know what you need to do. So Dr. Stedman, could I go in and talk about a couple of APA errors, common errors?
Yes, ma'am. Let me say one more thing before
Okay.
you do that. Dr. Revis was being very kind, and she said that she likes to see the revisions by Thursday. My challenge to you is this, okay? If you followed what we said for you to do, then if you did what you were supposed to, then the peer review process for task 1 would have ended today. Some of you are not there yet, and you've got to learn to balance your time and to make that happen. If it's not there, then we expect it to be there before this night's over with. So when class is over with, you need to get your peer reviews in there, because your peers need that information to be able to move on effectively. We want quality reviews though. Don't just put something in to say, I've met this assignment. Now, if you follow the process, and we're trying to teach you how to budget your time, peer reviews would be over with by Tuesday. You don't have to think about peer reviews anymore this week, okay? So you've got your revision on task 1 or whatever the task is. My challenge to you is, it shouldn't take a lot of work. I would try to get that in by Wednesday night and get that over with, so that when you are really buckling down to writing your next task, that's all that you've pretty much got to think about after Wednesday night. Just learn, and you need to schedule out time in your schedule. You need to say, okay, and you need to talk with your family and be candid with it. Say, look, for the next year, I need your support. I need you to help me with this. During this time, I've got to have this time to be able to get my work done, so you can fit in your family time as well, and your me time as well. You've got to learn how to budget that in. And and it's still early. Many of you are already figuring that out. But if you haven't, then please take our advice and work a schedule out. And you've got to work that schedule. You've got to live by it. Because deviating from it in the least little bit, it's going to create a domino effect for you later on if you get out of control with it. So that's just good advice. Dr. Revis, I'm going to stop the share so you can do what you need to do.
Okay, and while we're making this transition, I want to address the chat box. I answered yes to Jonathan's question. Do we submit using the same link? Yes, you're going to go in that same thread and submit your revisions. Now, obviously, I would like for you to name it Jonathan or Jeffrey's revised task 1. Put the word revised in there so that I know to go back and pick that one up.
When you're submitting your peer reviews, I'm constantly looking though to see if you have submitted anybody. Nobody's done that yet, but like Dr. Revis said, if you put revision beside it, that makes it so much easier for us to readily identify, you're ready for us to look at your work again. So.
And then Jenna asked the question, so we submit revisions to task 1 in the discussion feed, yes, or somewhere else, that same discussion thread until we get 100 or until Sunday at 9 p.m. No, your deadline on Sunday is to have it in the final Dropbox. We will revise with you. Hopefully, like Dr. Stedman said, he'd like your revisions in on Wednesday. And guys, take our revisions seriously. If we've got 4 things there and ask you to address 4 things, address all 4 things before you turn it back in, because we don't have time to go back and forth. So we like those in by Wednesday, no later than Thursday. So then you drop it in your final evaluation Dropbox. So I hope that cleared that up for Jenna.
And please consider, I will tell you, your peers have given you some great advice and have shown you some specific things, more specific than I did or Dr. Revis did. And you're supposed to. So, I would look at my peer reviews, and I would take them, most of them I would take very seriously.
I agree. Very good peer reviews, guys. All right, I want to go over some of the most commonly, some of the most common errors that I found when I was going through your work. And I want us to look at this first paragraph where it's really just a sentence. And I'm going to be quiet. I want you to read it. And then I want you to just raise your hand when you find at least one error. Raise your virtual hand. Okay, Dr. Wilkins.
There's a double citation. It was already cited once with 2009, so it does not need to be cited again at the end in that manner.
Correct. So this portion here at the end would not be needed. Correct. All right. Is there another error? I don't know if I'll call it an error, but it's something that we don't do in scholarly writing. Can anybody find that one? Anna.
I was actually going to say the same thing that that was just said. So I'm looking
Okay.
for scholarly error though.
All right. Sri.
Yes. I think the first name of the author is listed there, which is not necessary. So that's not scholarly writing, if I understood you correctly.
That is correct. So we just usually use the author's last name. Okay. And I think that is all in that sentence. One of the things, well, here's another error right here. Let's say that this person decided to end their citation at the end of the sentence. Do you see this period right here? That is wrong. If you do a citation at the end of your sentence, the period goes after your citation. And I saw that a couple of times for some of you. All right, hands down. Let's look at this sentence, the next sentence. Hands up when you can find an error. I can't see my whole.
I'm going through. Dr. Wilkins has raised her hand.
All right, Dr. Wilkins, you can't answer anymore. She's already written her dissertation, and I promise you, she
Okay,
knows that.
Cindy raised her hand. Mary raised her hand.
Okay, Mary, go ahead. What's wrong with this one?
And this one is direct quote, but there's some page reference at the end.
That's right. You need to have a page number at the end, or you could put it right here. But typically, when it's written parenthetically, I would say that or in text, I would say that the page number would go here at the end. All right, direct quote. And one last one, hands down, and let's take a moment and look at this one.
Okay, Erica's raised her hands.
Erica, what do you see on that one?
Where it says Walters, Moranza, and McNutley, yeah.
That's right.
McNulty. That should be Waters et al. Because it's two or more.
Perfect. That is correct.
Absolutely. Great job.
Absolutely. And there's one more little one. I think this is a lowercase s. See figure 3. So good job, guys. Want to look at the references very quickly. Just remember in your references, you've got to double space them, a hanging indent, and the title of the article. You only capitalize the first word at the beginning or the first word after a colon or semicolon. Whether it is an article, a title of an article from a journal or a book, lowercase. And that seems so strange to everybody unless you've written an APA before. So just remember that in your reference section.
And Dr. Revis, to begin with, if you're not accustomed to APA, especially 7th edition, that has it changed tremendously the other year when they went from the 6th edition to the 7th edition, and it is different. You're going to have to spend some time with the basic APA things, capitalization, indentation, those kinds of things. Once you have done it 1 or 2 times, it'll start becoming a natural part of what you do. But you're going to have to spend some time and camp out looking this up in APA, to be able to become fluent with it.
And we're a little tough on you at the beginning. That's just to make you learn it. And then you don't have to worry about it. When you get to your 3rd semester, you won't even think about it. It becomes second nature to you in your writing. So just dig in and learn it. And that's all you can do. All right, I'm going to stop share, Dr. Stedman.
Okay. Dr. Revis, just a reminder, by this point, you should know what's expected of you to complete task 1. Again, try your best to get it into us by tomorrow night, if possible, Thursday at the latest, so we can go ahead and get you cleared with task 1, hopefully, so that you can think only on task 2 that we're going to be going over in just a few minutes. Dr. Revis, anything else? I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about. I will remind you, make sure you use the template. Remember we said that, let me share again. Screen share. Okay. Can you see my screen?
No,
You cannot.
there it comes.
Okay, there it is. Okay. Let me see the template. Okay, there it is. Okay, remember when we talked last week, we said, remember, we pointed all this out. We said that, oh, let me come up. I've come too far. Or maybe I didn't. I did. No, bear with me, y'all. Here it is. Remember, we said that you just use this template, just like it is, and fill in the blanks with your work. Remember, this right here is for information only. We said that if you see something highlighted in yellow, that you got to write something. Remember? But then I said take all the yellow highlighting out. If it's in red, that means those are notes that you're to consider, but then once you consider it, take it out. But we said if it's written in black, what happens? It stays. Do you see all of this right here? The purpose, all of that, your name here, the purpose, task 1. What you see, school profile? What are you supposed to do with that yellow highlighting? Take it out. You take the yellow, but you leave school profile here. Now, while I'm pointing this out, remember with APA capitalization, remember the S in school is capitalized, but what about the P in profile? It's lowercase. That's a part of capitalization. But then all of this, the task 1 description, instructions, prompt number 1, you write all of that. You've got to include that. That's a part of your template. Then you get to your PL research. PLC research, you write it just like it is and take the yellow highlighting out, and then you put your narrative work in there. You must use the template. So please remember that. The other thing, the helpful hints document, I can't tell you enough how beneficial that's going to be to the success of you doing your work. And then the AAPSL example, I mean, it lays it out step by step. I would look at that and say, have I modeled mine similar to this. Now, remember with the helpful hints, and we're gonna move on to task 2. Again, remember what we have done. We have given you your directions, but then what have we done under all the directions? We've given you almost a perfect example of exactly how it should be similar to the work that you're doing. So why wouldn't you look at that, as you're completing your work? Let me move on down to it's slow. There. Remember, your reference section goes at the end, followed by your appendices. Remember, you cannot submit your appendices in electronic form. You must show us the actual artifacts. If you put a link there, that's okay, but just remember, you have to show us the artifacts. So, okay, here it is. Task 2, prompt 1.
Dr. Stebbins,
Yes.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
This is Jasmine. I know we're going to talk about task 2, but that section where we have like our agenda from our PLC, say if one of our peers, I want to say it was from one of my peers, asked a question about possibly doing a revision, like maybe adding something, how would I go back if that wasn't done during that first meeting? Or should I do that for the second PLC?
No, you can always go back and add to any of the work. You can add to any of your work all the way up until it is finally submitted at the end to task stream. So if there's things that you want to go back and fix, you can always go back and edit that. You have that right to do that.
Okay. So even if it's a part of my agenda from the first PLC meeting, I can go back and add that onto my agenda?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can edit anything up until your final submission. Well, on this, your final submission on Sunday night.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You can put it back in there as many times as you need to for us to review. It's only in the review stage right now. So you can edit as many times as you need to in the review stage. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Dr. Revis, let's move on to task 2. If you would start us off, please.
Okay, so in task 2, remember in task 1, you were getting that PLC together, you were doing research about PLCs. And by the way, I meant to say, many of you talked about how your school compared your school's PLC model to the DeFore research. So that was really neat. I appreciate that. But that was the organizational meeting. Here is where you are going to roll your sleeves up and you are going to decide what data to examine and how you're going to go through that analysis. Okay. So in the first section, data collection strategies, you will work with that PLC to determine the strategies that you will use to collect data to determine the most pressing need for improving student achievement. So some of you got into this a little bit in your first meeting, and I made note of that, but you didn't get too far down the road. So we're going to talk about here how you determine what strategies you were going to use to pull and collect all your data sources. Okay. And so the narrative here, I love the way she goes through and she talks about they decided to look at data from the school report card and from EVOS.
And we're going to talk about EVOS on Thursday night a lot.
Right. So, and she described where that data comes from and where it lives and what data She said they collected data from 2017-18 school year and 2018-19. Remember, you're collecting your most recent data. And she also talked about growth. And then she goes in to a description of how they split apart different data sets for each member of the PLC to look at. You know, one person looked at subgroups for 6th grade, while another looked at subgroup data for 7th grade. That's just how she did it. You don't have to do it that way, but I really like the way that some delegation was taking place there. And it was probably a lot of volunteering as well. But they decided how they were going to split that up and how they were going to analyze the data individually. And then she built a presentation and they added their data to that presentation so that as they were examining data, they went ahead and started looking at it. All right, so the second section is your most pressing need. Identifying your most pressing need. And this is the process that you used. This team obviously looked at subgroup data. You may be looking at, in a middle school, at math at each grade level, and you may be comparing performance and growth at each grade level. I encourage you to look at subgroup performance, but you don't have to. But you have to talk about what did you do and what process did you use to identify that most pressing need? Did you as a PLC determine that we are going to identify the area that had the lowest growth? Or are we going to identify the subject that had the lowest percentage, or the group of students that showed the lowest performance, or the subgroup that showed the lowest proficiency? You got to talk about that.
And like Dr. Revis said, you know, it will vary from person to person how you decide to attack this as a team. But the good thing about this is when you're meeting with your PLC, and I'm looking at Anna and Rebecca right now, they may be on the same team. And Anna can say, well, you know, I thought about blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that. And you know, that's the best thing since sliced bread. And then all of a sudden you can see the aha. Rebecca says, you know, have you thought about so-and-so? And Anna would say, you know, I hadn't thought about that, Rebecca. And so you see how the team helps each other out, something that you would have never thought about. Once you start looking at what I'm going to do, somebody else will come up with an ingenious idea. So that's the whole purpose of collaborating and looking at this together.
And we expect that no two of you are going to have the same information. Well, you'll have the same stuff, but not the same information, because all teams are going to look at different data sets and all teams will approach it differently. Okay. And she goes through and talks about the first step they did, the second step they did, and thirdly, they looked at the lowest performing data between Math 1 and English Language Arts. And then they looked at their subgroup data. So I think what they did is they looked at it broadly and then they funneled and narrowed it down.
And I like the terminology, Dr. Revis, where they said first, second, third, and then finally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's nothing to think about. They spelled it out.
Right. So this person, obviously, their PLC did some data analysis on their own outside of the PLC meeting. And when they came to the meeting, that's when they really started doing the compare and the contrast and trying to identify areas of need. Okay.
Okay.
You
want me
to
ahead. Pick up for
yes, take over, please.
And I'll give you a chance to get some water or something.
Sure, thank you.
The next one, your heading is collaborative data analysis. Now, all of you are familiar with this already. I think most of the schools, I think they call this a data dive. You've done this. This is when your team gets together and you may be in sixth grade and where the sixth grade teachers get together in their PLCs and they, you start looking at all, everything as it relates to all the tests that you've done, all the subgroups, all the groups, everything that you can think about to find out what's wrong with sixth grade in math. What do we need to do to improve in this area? You've got to look at the data. You've got to look at where you are to know where you have to go. And that's what you're doing here. You're taking all the data that you've collected between between 1 and 2 and 3. You're looking at all of that data and you're saying, okay, this is what we've got. And you start tearing it apart. You start analyzing it. You look at it every way you can. And I'm going to go back to Anna and Rebecca again because I see them. Anna can say, I look at this, guys, and she points out something distinctly that she sees. And then all of a sudden, Rebecca's going to say, look here. Did y'all notice this? And all of a sudden, you're going to begin seeing things, and it's all going to come alive. And this is why we said to you, don't go into this with presupposed ideas that, this is the most pressing need. This is where many of the teams have come back and they said, we thought it was so-and-so, but once we got to this point, the data proved differently. So let the data speak to you. Again, tear it apart, look at it every angle that you can look at it. Dr. Ravis, would you like to pick up now?
Right. And then just in her example, she goes through and, in reviewing this piece of data, I think that we're talking about their EVOS. Well, I guess no, performance and EVOS. It was evident that our most pressing need was in mathematics. So anyway, they dive into that. And she talks about how they looked at it and just the process that they used, that how they collaborated as they went through this analysis.
And if there's any aha moments that happen in there, narratively tell us about those aha moments, discoveries that you make.
Right. And we got a chat from Anna said that EVOS data was supposed to be released tomorrow. So, wow, very timely release.
Amen.
Of course, as Dr. Crawford said the other night, it's February and that's last year's data, but anyway.
And that's going to be good because Thursday, Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Crawford both are principals. So they're going to be sharing some things. So with it coming to them tomorrow, they'll be able to share some really good stuff with us on Thursday night.
And so again, she's just discussing how they went through collaboratively. And you need to make sure your reviewer is going, or your evaluator is going to make sure that you have evidence that you facilitated a collaborative team discussion of the data. You could do this data analysis on your own, but you've got to demonstrate that you facilitated or led this PLC through this analysis and that it was collaborative. And so she talks about proficiency and performance, and then she hits into EVOS, the growth. And then that last sentence, she's confirming that they made the best choice for the pressing need.
Right.
You can't say that enough in this task too, about your pressing need.
Dr. Revis.
Yes.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
If when we the difference between artifacts and there was something else, artifacts, and then what we use for our appendices,
evidences.
Our evidences. Thank you. Is it possible if we could, for this task, to use a short clip or of audio recording of our meeting and then attach it as a link for our artifact and for our evidence?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
But you need to remember, you'll need to house it in your YouTube channel.
so
Okay. As
so
far
not
as
like a video recording, but just an audio recording.
right.
Will it
Oh, okay.
go
Audio
to
recording.
And and is this Anna? Was this Anna speaking?
No,
Yeah,
Elise.
no, okay. Just make sure that if you do that, that there is always an artifact to support that artifact with like an agenda, or if it's, and I'm just going to use this, if you did a PowerPoint presentation and you did the link to that, you would show the frames to your PowerPoint as evidence of that, because remember, evaluators are not going to open up a link.
So we would put the link in our task, but attach the slides.
Yeah, you need to show something there, and remember that the links are going to support you when you're completing your competency folio that we haven't built yet. So those links are going to be important. You can put them there, but you must also put something that we can see.
Okay,
To support that. Okay.
gotcha. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Dr. Stedman, I have a quick question.
So
in terms of the goal itself, and I'm looking at it, from a 5-6 week perspective. RPLC came up with, I think, short-term goals, like in terms of student achievement and student learning. We're particularly looking at corrective instruction from a standards perspective, as opposed to, subgroups or student population, because the ones that we're looking at were the students who were completely remote for 1.5 years.
right.
And we want to identify gaps. So broadly speaking, I think we are trying to identify gaps and fill them in, as we move on. But to sort of, shorten it down, or to be more specific, we're looking at each cumulative formative assessment and identifying gaps, and looking at the standards where the gaps are shown, or where the gaps are seen, and looking at corrective instruction so that would actually fix those gaps. Now, this would be a short-term goal, but it would be a short-term goal for multiple assessments.
Okay, and that's okay. And you're going to, the end result is you're hoping that you're going to see improvements on the end of grade testing when those scores come back.
Yeah.
And just remember, when you do your action plan, and we'll talk about that not tonight, but when you do your action plan, you will actually indicate that as your short-term. You got to have short-term goals, midterm goals, and there will be some long-term goals as well that you identify in all that. So you're on the right track with that thinking, Sri. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Revis, would you like to move on with just talking about out the most pressing need?
Okay, and in your heading called the most pressing need is where, again, you talk about how you and your team have identified the most pressing need, and then at the very end clearly identify the most pressing need at the end of your narrative of this section. All right. So Sri, if you're looking at curriculum, areas in the curriculum, your most pressing need may be ratios and proportion for all students or whatever, but you have to, your data has to guide you there.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So in task 1, in prompt 1, you are talking narratively about your data, what you gathered, the process you used, your collaborative analysis, how you did the analysis, and then coming up with your most pressing need. But in prompt 2, you are going to tell that story graphically. Dr. Stedman, can you take over for a second?
Can. Everything that you've talked about in prompt 1, you're going to actually show it in prompt 2. You will graphically represent the work done narratively from prompt 1 in the forms of charts, tables, graphs, etc. These visuals are to be used to illustrate and support the data analysis and conclusions. Now, look, guys, don't reinvent the wheel. When you get, if you're looking at last year's EOG results or EOC results, then when those results come back, guess what? There is in your report card, everything, there's already charts and graphs, and tables and things of that already completed for you. You can extract those things that are applicable to what you're trying to show us, and you can use that and embed that in your work. Now, you can come up with your own if you want to. Some of you are creative with that, and you know that, you know, you can put information in there and it'll create it for you. But I'm just saying, a lot of the information that you need is already, when you did that data dive and you started digging into it, there's a lot of stuff out there already that will help you visually represent what you're talking about. That's what you're doing here. Prompt 1, you're telling about it. Prompt 2, you're showing us. Now, remember, if you show us something, you must put a short description of what it is we're looking at, but you don't have to go into great detail like you did in prompt 1. A lot of it's going to emulate the same thing. Again, you're writing about it in prompt 1, you're showing us in prompt 2. Please remember to identify your graphic work as figures according to APA, and please remember that all graphics should include, as I said, a narrative explanation of what is being presented. Jonathan, you got your hand raised.
Yes, my brain is just kind of working right now, and I was wondering if it would be appropriate to show a correlation between reading data versus the math data as it relates to our word problems. Just kind of thinking about how we connect that data. Is that something? Would that be appropriate for what I'm thinking?
You can, but now you've got to. Are you looking at your most pressing need in math? Or are you looking at your most pressing need as being a literacy need?
Well, it's going to be math. It's going to be math, but I was wondering, if we were looking at all the data and my data, when we're bringing it to the table, do we see a relationship with our greatest need in math also being our students that are also struggling readers?
You could show that, but I wouldn't camp out there, because you don't want to get so involved that you don't have time to focus on what you've identified as your most pressing need. But yes, you can show the correlation there. That I have no problem with that. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome.
Dr. Stedman, can I ask a quick question, please?
Sure. Yes.
So I want to be able to include like a duration of time that we're going to analyze the data. Like, I know we have this is week 3, but like, can I say like over a 6-week period of time, or what can I say will be the time
Absolutely.
period?
And remember, you're going to do an action plan, and your action plan is actually going to ask you to look at, as I said, your short-term goals, your middle-term goals, and your long-term goals. So that would be, I would say that is what you're talking about over the next 6. Those would be short-term goals.
Okay. So I should say 6 weeks. 6 weeks is a good short-term goal.
It's based on what it is, but you may want to say looking at a grading period.
Okay.
Because that would give you something to look at. Or you may have a benchmark testing coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You could gauge it around that time. Based on what you're doing, then that would determine, how much time you would put in there.
If I'm progress monitoring, so that would be the past, which would identify the need.
Yeah.
And then moving forward to see if there are areas of improvement, that would be over a 6-week period, and that would be valid.
And your fidelity checks are going to be that you're monitoring along the way. You're not waiting just till the end. Something that's happening all along the way. So those are some of your short-term things that you're going to be doing in there. And you'll have to tell how you're going to do that, who's going to do it and all that. And we'll talk about that when you get to your action plan.
Okay, thank you.
But you're on the right track. You're thinking in the right direction already. That's good. And just remember, at the end, you always end with a reference section, APA style, and you always end with an appendices. Remember, at this point, the minimum thing you're going to have in your appendices is at least minutes of your meeting, your agenda, maybe a picture of you presenting, things that's going on with you working with your PLC at a minimum. Let me see.
And then when you finish task 2, that's when you are going to meet with your principal or leadership team to present your findings. And this is probably going to be one of the first times you've sat with your principal and or leadership team to talk about what your PLC came up with and your data dive. And you would need to do a PowerPoint presentation. This presentation can be face-to-face or it can be virtual. But you would want to make sure that you're telling the story to your admin team, just like what you've done narratively and graphically here in this task. This is what we looked at. These are the data sets, and this is how we determine our most pressing need.
Now, when you submit task 2 this Sunday night for our review, peer and instructor review, you may not have had time to do this yet, meet your administration. That's okay. You put us a disclaimer in there and you tell us when you submit that work, my plans are to meet with administration on Monday at such and such a time. And when you resubmit the work to us, then evidence of that meeting must be in that before it can be considered for final grade. We know that you probably, most of you will not have time to get all of that done by Sunday night and meet with your administration. And again, you may want to get our approval on it first, but then before next week, when you turn it in as a final grade, you would have had to have met with your administration. And when you resubmit it to us, then you would have included that information at that time. Cindy?
If your admin is in your PLC, do you still need to meet with them individually?
No, but you're going to have to present it in your PLC just like you were presenting to your, because you've got to have the same artifacts and the work. So you've got to put your work together. And you need to indicate too that when you're doing your narrative work that that your principal is a part of that. You've still got to have your artifacts, and again, when you can do that and present to your PLC, and your principal is there, so you're just presenting to the team that you're working with.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dr. Revis?
Guys, I have not been checking the chat box.
And I've been trying to, they've been talking. So
okay. Jasmine says task 2 rough draft is due this Sunday. Yes. Or task 1 final is due this Sunday. Yes.
Both.
Both. Every Sunday from here on out, you're going to be submitting one for draft and one for final. Okay. So that's why Dr. Stedman and I are trying to set some time frames for you to get, for example, so you can get your peer reviews done. Those are out of the way. You don't have to worry about them. Now you've got to do revisions by Wednesday, or Thursday, get those over with, because you need to focus on that next task going into the weekend. You've had your meeting this week and you need to get it all written up. This is a labor-intensive task. Again, a great deal of writing. And this writing is a little bit different than I think what you did in task 1, because you're going to be talking about data. And when you talk about data, it's a little bit different kind of writing than just when you're doing research, like the PLC research section that you did. That's a little bit different than what we're asking you to do in task 2.
And Dr. Revis, I had it down for us. We're not going to go into task 3. I think it's too much form.
I do too.
Dr. Hamilton may go over that a little bit, introduce that on Thursday night if we have time, but if not, we will hit that hard come Tuesday. You're okay. I don't know that anybody's going to be at that place anyway. There's one more thing that I want us to do before we leave. Let me share the screen again. I don't know why it's taking its time today. It's playing games with me. Okay, let's look at okay, under completed peer, I'm trying to find it, Dr. Revis, completed peer reviews. AAPSL, here it is, completed peer review Dropbox. Okay. And I don't know exactly which week it is that's coming up. Dr. Revis, can you look and see what week their Zoom video is for the AAPSL task 1 and 2?
Sure.
Okay, I want you to look under the completed peer review process, the very last item, that's Zoom video for AAPSL task 1 and 2. The only reason I'm pointing this out, you need to begin thinking about it. After you complete task 2, after it's over with, so that you've got a couple of weeks before you have to think about this, then you're going to come together with your PLC. Somebody's going to choose to be the Zoom team leader, and they're going to set up a Zoom session, and you're going to meet as a team. And then you're going to be able to look at all that you've done with task 1 and task 2 of the AAPSL. You're going to have a scholarly discussion about the AAPSL process up to that point. Now, we say task 1 and 2 because you will have completed task 1 and 2. You can talk about what you've done, but in this, you can also look ahead and you can talk as a team about task 3, 4, and 5 as you're moving forward to complete the AAPSL. So just know that this activity is coming up. You need to go ahead and begin thinking about who is going to take charge of this activity. You'll be responsible for setting up the Zoom meeting. You'll be responsible for uploading the video once it's over with. You'll be responsible for sending the completed link back to each member. And then each member will be responsible for submitting that same link from the team into Blackboard for grade. Each person in the team will submit it. However, Dr. Revis and I will view those videos. And let's say, for instance, I'm looking at Shania, Jonathan, Cindy, and Shree right now on my screen. Let's say that those 4 were in a Zoom team. When we look at it, you can submit the link, and I'm going to pick on Jonathan. Let's just say that Jonathan decided that he just was not going to say anything in which Jonathan, that's not going to be Jonathan. Jonathan's going to speak his point. I know he is. But just say Jonathan didn't do anything. Well, guess what? I can't grade Jonathan like Shania, who really gave a lot, put a lot into that meeting. So we're going to look at how much you present, how much everybody equally shares. We're going to look at the leadership of the person in charge. These are your opportunities. Now, guess what? If Shania is the leader this time, then the next time in her group, somebody else needs to be the leader. So there's going to be other opportunities throughout the semester for everybody to take the lead in things, but you've got to figure out who that's going to be to start with. Dr. Revis, you need to make any comments on that?
Dr. Stedman, that comes in week 5.
Week 5, okay. So you need to begin thinking about that already.
So again, everybody's gonna have to facilitate or be the Zoom leader during the semester. So if you want to go step out there and volunteer to be the first Zoom team member, that's fine. But we will, on this first one, we provide you some professional dialogue starters and give you some ideas of some things you can discuss in your meeting. But again, this is to give you some leadership. We want to hear you talk about things you've learned from your readings and from your classwork thus far, and talk anything you want to talk about tasks 1 and 2 and future tasks. So I think we've covered what we need to say at this point.
And I want to go back and look. Now, this is the completed peer reviews. I need everybody to go back and to look at where it says my grades. You need to check and see, because you may have thought I have submitted my peer reviews, but it didn't come to us correctly. I'm thinking that may have been the case with 3 or 4 of you, maybe. Remember, you completed 2 peer reviews, or you should have. If Jonathan completed a peer review on Shania and he completed one on Cindy, he's going to go here and he's going to my peer review one, and he's going to on Shania, and he's going to put her peer review there. Then he has to go AAPSL task 1 peer review 2 and put Cindy's peer review there. I have gotten in a couple of cases where I've gotten peer review 2, but I don't have a peer review 1 in there because the person submitted here, but I didn't get anything there. I'm thinking that maybe some of you may have submitted twice in the same place. If you think that when you go in here and you don't see a grade, if you've submitted 2 and you don't see, because I've graded everything that was submitted to me up until 6:30 this afternoon. So if you think that you have submitted something, both of them, and you don't see a grade for it, that means you need to go back and resubmit it because it was not submitted properly, okay?
Now, the last time I looked at it was about 7:30 this morning. So if you turned yours in today, I have not gotten to them.
Yeah, but
I will.
And I'm speaking to my group to do this. If you submitted anything after 6:30, I have not had a chance to look at that. But up till 6:30, I had graded everything that had been submitted. At that point. So I'm just saying that I'm thinking that. Let me just ask, Sari, have you submitted 2 peer reviews?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I'm only showing 1 for you, and I'm pointing you out because I know that you would have submitted 2 peer reviews. So something happened in that process, so you need to look at that. Okay.
Dr. Stedman, I have grade for 2 peer reviews.
Do you? Okay.
I do.
Well, it's only showing only 1 in there, so we'll figure it out. I don't know what it was. I think you submitted 2 in the same place, and that would have given you grades. So I don't know. Let me go back and look at that, and we'll talk if we need to. Okay.
Sure. One was graded on the 23rd. The other one was graded on the 24th. But I did make the mistake of putting the second review with the review 1, but then I went back in and then I uploaded it as review 2, but then I have a grade for
okay, and it may be that it's not showing up on my end because whatever you did, it was not corrected on my end. I'll have to, but I knew you would have submitted your work. That's why I'm just asking you that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made the mistake. Will there be a penalty?
No, there
Okay.
won't. There won't. That's why I'm saying this, because I saw the quality of most of the work coming in, and I said they wouldn't have done this much work and not have had both of them in. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. Okay.
Well, it is confusing. You're having to submit it both back to the author of your in the thread, but for us, you have to go here.
Is there a way for one of you guys to make a document that just simply states where we submit things, when we submit like the revisions, because it is a lot of information. We have to submit like the same assignments to multiple places. And I think it would just help everyone out with these issues. There was just a document that stated where we submit stuff and when.
I don't know that there would be enough time. That I see what you're saying. The more you do it, the easier it's going to get. But there's so much that has to be submitted. I wouldn't even know how to begin doing a document like that, Dr. Revis. Would you?
Well, basically,
I mean, you guys are expressing it verbally during the meeting, so I was just wondering if it could just be written down.
Basically, you've got, and you'll get used to these places. If you'll scroll down on the left-hand side, every week where it said AAPSL task for review, that's where you're going to put your work for us to review. That's when it's in the review phase. That's where you're going to put your feedback, pick up and put feedback to your teammates. So you're going to work in that review drop box for feedback to your teammates, and while you're working with your instructors in the review process.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. But really, what's confusing a lot of us is now the revisions. Where do we post the revisions?
Okay,
I know
let's open
back in the same place.
Okay, let's open that up and let's go. Let's go under task 1. Do you mind opening that up, Dr. Stedman?
Right here.
Yeah, let's just look at it. All right, so you see the author. That's the author of who originated the thread. Is that the correct way to say it? So Shri is always going to go there when she is in the review process with her and her instructor. She's going to open that thread, and that's where she's going to put, in fact, it says task 1 revise. Okay.
Or Dr. Revis, actually, when she goes here,
she can create a new thread.
She's going to create, you can create there, and let's make it easy. There and create a new thread. When you get ready to send it back to us for revision, create a new thread and put AAPSL task 1 revision and attach it there.
And listen, guys, while you're learning this, if you mess up and submit something in the wrong place and we can't pick it up, reach out to us. Dr. Stedman is much quicker on his grading than I am. But if something's sitting there submitted for more than 24 hours, reach out to us, because you may have put it in the wrong place. Hey, Blackboard's not perfect. Sometimes you put it in the right place, but we don't get notified.
Right. That's happened before. Let's go back to this again. The AAPSL that you're working on with the revisions right now, go back to the same place where you submitted it the first time. Create a new thread, AAPSL task 1 revision, attach it and resubmit it. It goes right back to us. And at this time, only Dr. Revis and I are going to look at your work, because your peer reviews are over with. It's coming back to us for us to say, yes, it's ready for you to, guess what? Take it to
on down just a little bit.
Assignment Dropbox.
Yeah, and we'll tell you you're ready to submit for final evaluation, and that's
what,
where you put
that's
it.
What we'll say. We'll say, excellent work. Submit to the assignment Dropbox and move on to task 2. That's what we're going to say. And most of you should be almost at the point where you can do this. Don't put it in there though until you think that it's ready to go in there, okay? Because when it goes there, remember, if we have to send it back a third time, then that's just slowing the process down for you. So work hard to make sure that all those APA things are fixed and that you, to the best of your ability, it looks like it's supposed to be ready for us to say 100 and move on.
Yes, and Julie, if you want to give me a call, I'll be glad for you and I to brainstorm and about, and you can jot some things down and maybe we can create that document that you've talked about. I'll be glad to work with you. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Somebody raised, 2 people raised their hands. I don't know who they were. Whoever it is, just open up and talk.
This is Tracy Meekins.
Hey, Tracy.
I want to make sure I understand the process. For the purpose of the revisions, are we only using the suggestions from the peer reviews?
You use those as you deem appropriate for your work, and then you make sure that if I told you you needed to do something, that is absolutely done.
Okay, so where can I locate suggestions from the professors? Because I see the suggestions from my peers, but I don't see anything out beyond that.
Okay.
It's your grade at work.
When
it should
I
be monitor my grades.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And I'm still trying to figure out, Tracy, you're
mine, Tracy.
You're okay.
You're mine.
So right. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Dr.
Yeah.
Randall.
I think you just go under my grades, Tracy, and it should pop up.
Okay.
There'll be
Thank
should be a whole string of all your assignments and stuff, and my feedback comes up with it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, this is Jennifer Sutton. I have a question going back to when you were talking about creating the PowerPoint, and if we meet with we're meeting face to face. So if I meet with my PLC and my principal comes in or my administrator, you mentioned something about recording. I see that's optional, but I guess what would you suggest? I mean, since we're face to face, just setting an iPad up, recording it, uploading it to YouTube, or?
And if you can't do that, Jennifer, just have somebody take a picture of you presenting, and your agenda should indicate that your principal's there. If you're doing if you're presenting, just make sure that you have your PowerPoint presentation in there and put the frames in there, and that's evidence along with your agenda that you've done what you needed to do in the presentation.
That will be great. I can do that. So I didn't have to record the PowerPoint, and then the pictures would be sufficient.
Right. And if you're doing it virtually, you know, Zoom has or whatever you're doing has the capabilities of you
recording that Zoom.
Recording that information as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And essentially, I would expect to see a slideshow for the presentation.
Right.
Regardless of whether you're doing it face-to-face or virtually, I would expect that slideshow, and for you to show a screenshot of each slide, or I don't know how you turn that into your Word document. I guess you take a screenshot. I don't know. But I would expect to see that slideshow.
I was getting confused a while ago. You got Tracy Meekins, I got Tracy Eubanks, and that's why when said Tracy, I said, is that my Tracy or your Tracy? But they're both our Tracy's. They're both
there
our
you
Tracy's,
go.
But I was getting
everybody's both ours.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions?
One last question.
Go ahead, Sri.
Well, in terms of the Zoom meeting that we talked about, and I know I'm asking this ahead of time, is there a rubric that goes with the Zoom meeting? That way the leader can sort of negotiate, like navigate through the conversation?
Yes, Dr. Revis will actually share some things with the whole group. Maybe next week, Dr. Revis, we can go ahead and give them that information.
Great. And yeah, we'll talk more about that before you get down to it. And, you know, we're looking at each of you. We want to show, particularly the Zoom master, that's where we want to see the leadership demonstrated, but we'll talk about all that.
Right.
Okay, other questions? Y'all have been a great group this evening. Very attentive, great questions.
I don't see any more hands up.
I think that's it. Okay, guys. Rebecca, do you have a question?
I had asked a question at the beginning about watermark. I haven't gotten any emails about the watermark yet.
Anybody gotten has anybody gotten anything? So you're okay. Dr. Lamb will talk about that on Thursday night, Rebecca.
Thank you.
And if he doesn't bring it up, remind us, Rebecca, to ask about it, okay? I'm sure he will bring it up again, though. Okay, guys, we have a great Thursday evening planned for you. Honestly, the EVOS presentation is one of my most favorite presentations. Dr. Lamb is truly an expert when it comes to that, and he's going to share something with you that I promise you is going to open your eyes as it relates to EVOS that you've never seen or thought of before. It's great. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday night. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Revis.
Thank you. Reach out to us if you need anything.